The Prime Minister has departed from the Glasgow Climate Summit, having presented his technology-focused plan to reduce emissions to the global community. Political reporter Melissa Clark has been following the discussions at COP26 and joins me now. Melissa, how was Scott Morrison's presence at Glasgow received?
Look, it's an interesting one because Scott Morrison made it very clear prior to his arrival that Australia wouldn't be formally increasing its 2030 emissions reduction target, which was the main objective of this gathering that we are seeing in Scotland. So other world leaders were well clear that Australia wouldn't be doing that. So what it meant was that Scott Morrison was trying to convince others that Australia's commitment to hit net zero emissions by 2050 and the technology focus it's applying to try and get there is a sufficient amount of action or ambition from Australia. And that meant that his speech to other leaders in the COP26 plenary was quite a defensive one. He spent most of the few minutes he had allocated to him defensively explaining Australia's position and its approach in focusing on technology and playing the long-term game. Now, if we contrast that to how some of the other world leaders approached their speeches to the COP, they were certainly pushing and imploring for more action on those 2030 targets, knowing there's still a week and a half of these talks to go. The likes of Joe Biden, the US President, the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, the head of the UN, all took that opportunity to implore for more action from developed countries in particular for 2030, while Scott Morrison really was on the defensive.
Melissa, aside from the focus on 2030 emissions reduction, there have been a number of side deals relating to climate change. What has Australia done there?
This is an interesting one, and it shows how these events unfold, as well as sort of the main game of what COP26 is focused on, those nationally determined contributions to emissions reduction by 2030. There's a number of other side deals and pledges that countries try to get others to agree to. So one of the key ones that we had was a pledge to reduce methane emissions by 30% by 2030. Now, Scott Morrison made it very clear prior to his departure Australia would not be signing up to that. The Nationals here in Australia were particularly concerned what that might mean for Australia's agriculture sector. Worth noting that it would also have a big impact on the resources sector too. So Australia didn't join the majority of countries doing that, including other big resource countries like the US and Canada. Another side deal that was done that Australia did sign up to was a pledge to end deforestation by the end of 2030 and improve the land, land restoration in that time period. Interestingly, Brazil did sign up to that pledge, which has been a critical one. And there's a third pledge that's worth noting as well, a breakthrough agenda it's being called, where nations are committing to new technologies, very much looking at things like clean steel and hydrogen, which very much fits in with the Australian government's approach. So Australia did sign that side deal too.
Now all the leaders have left the talks. What happens next?
Yeah, there's still a week and a half to go. This is an event where the leaders come at the start to make their pitches, and then it gets down to some of the technical negotiations. So from this point forward, you'll see a lot of official delegations from all the different countries talk about things such as the rules that govern this process, ways of keeping each other's nations to account. So that will be a critical process. But perhaps the biggest thing still to be done is securing financial support for developing countries. There's a big divide between developed countries and particularly those that have long history of historical emissions, so those countries that industrialised first, compared to developing countries. We're talking countries like India and China that still have very large emissions now, but say they haven't had the same opportunity to develop their countries, provide electricity to all of their populations to the same extent developed countries have, and they're looking for financial support to help them get to that point. This is a big point of contention, and that will be key to the next lot of discussions over the next week and a half.
Melissa Clark reporting from Canberra.